He's never voted for
Well,
Republican.
you've said that you're a conservative.
In the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything. We all want to help the disadvantaged, and the question is, how do we identify them?
When you do look at the socioeconomics, you see the huge disparity between white households and black households. I've read your book twice because I wanted to give it a chance. Your argument that race has no place in that equation is really fundamentally flawed.
And what Martin Luther King wrote in his book, Why We Can't Wait, is he called it, we need a Bill of Rights for the disadvantaged.
As you are a student of Dr. King, I'm not only a student of Dr. King, I know his daughter, Bernice.
Sunny. Hey fam, welcome and welcome back to One and Done. Today we're going to be jumping in and having a look at the spew with special guest Coleman Hughes. Now Coleman Hughes is not a conservative, he's more of a centrist and more of a common sense thinker. Now he's going to be questions on race relations and the impoverished. Now he has some very interesting takes on this subject, but as usual, Sunny hostile. She doesn't want to keep it cordial, she's going to go for the neck. So before we jump into the video, if you want to help a brother out, help me get to the 1000 sub club. Don't forget to hit the like, smash the subscribe, ring the notification bell, share this video far and wide, and let's roll the tape.
Is explain to folks what you mean by this. Arguments for a colorblind America. What do you mean when you say that?
So a lot of people equate colorblindness to I don't see race or to pretending not to see race. I think that's a big mistake. We all see race, right? And we're all capable of being racially biased, so we should all be self-aware to that possibility. My argument is not for that. My argument is that we should try our very best to treat people without regard to race, both in our personal lives and our public policy.
Of course.
Absolutely. We all see race. We all have cultural bias, whether it's the food we eat, whether it's the music we listen to, the way we dance, the things we celebrate. We're culturally biased to things that are familiar to us, even the way we look, the way we act, the way we behave. For instance, the way people behave in Japan will be completely different to the way people behave in the West.
The reason I wrote this book is because in the past 10 years, it has become very popular to, in the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything, right? And I think that is the wrong way to fight racism, and that's why I wrote this book at this time.
I'm sorry, baby. Yeah. Can I just point out that there is a reason for that? You know, when I went to school, getting any information about anyone's race was not taught. No history, there was no black history, none of those things were taught. And here in America, 100 years ago when I was a young woman, that's how people saw you. That's how they judged you. So I think, I don't want to say it's your youth, but I think you have a point, but I think you have to also take into consideration what people have lived through in order to understand why there has been such a pointing of very specific racial things, like women couldn't get into colleges. If you were a black person, there were a lot of colleges wouldn't accept you. Trying to equal the playing field. I think that's what a lot of folks have been trying to do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think that's your experience, and that's valid. You know, as a counterpoint, when I was in 5th grade, we all watched Roots together in public school.
Yeah.
So these are different experiences. I think it's also different generations. It's different parts of the country, right? We have very different cultures all living together in one country. So I'm not going to deny that, but I view this notion of a colorblind society similar to the idea of a peaceful society, which is to say it's an ideal, it's a North Star. And the point is not that we're ever going to get there, we're not going to touch it, but we have to know when we're going forward and when we're going backwards. And we're going backwards when we're doing woke kindergarten in San Francisco, you know, you didn't hear about this story?
No, but wait,
because I want to get to the part of the book.
Yeah, and Whoopi, she used to ride to school on a T-Rex, we know that. But yeah, colorblind society, that's the ideal, that we look past color and gravitate towards the things that bring us together. Now at the school, that should definitely be education, sports, community activities, and he's just about to get into some of the stuff that they're teaching at kindergarten. They cut him off real short and real quick, didn't they? Yeah, individual experiences are valid and important, and they can be used to, you know, derive some wisdom. However, they can't be applied directly, say, nationally, because each person's lived experience is completely different. They might have different cultural backgrounds, because these days there are so many different cultures, especially in the West. So you're not going to please all minority groups. So what they need to do is focus on things that bring the nation together. Yes, your culture is important to you, but for the good of the nation has to come first. You can't bring up and make laws for certain groups of people that help that group of people and then hinder the rest of the population. And whilst it's good to look back, you must look forward. Yes, look back, learn your history, learn from mistakes. But the most important thing is to look forward, because you can't change what happened yesterday, but you certainly can change the outcomes of tomorrow. And especially when you apply it to the younger generation, to the young kids. They have innocence and innocence of mind, so why would you push propaganda on these kids and get them thinking about race and excluding people based on race and increase bias? Now, when we see kids playing together, they very rarely have bias. The bias usually comes from possibly the parents, the teachers, and outside influences. But naturally, kids are inquisitive and they love to play and share. So why would you push race and that type of ideology on these children? Now, Coleman Hughes explains his strategy to lift not only minority groups out of poverty, but all people out of poverty.
Actually, you believe that public policies that address socioeconomic differences would be better at benefiting disadvantaged groups, and that race-based policies often hurt the very people they're trying to help. What are some examples of policies that would be better at reducing racial disparities?
So my overall argument is that class, socioeconomics, is a better proxy for disadvantage. We all want to help the disadvantaged, and the question is, how do we identify them, right? The default right now in a lot of areas of policy is to use Black and Hispanic identity as a proxy for disadvantage. And my argument is that you actually get a better picture of who needs help by looking at socioeconomics and income. That picks out people in a more accurate way. Right? So,
I love it. He's nailed it. How do we identify the impoverished? Well, you look at the people that are living impoverished, and people of all races are living impoverished. But there are some communities that are more impoverished than others. But by using Coleman Hughes's metrics, you are helping minorities, but you're helping everybody at once. There's no discrimination. People that are in need of help are getting help, no matter what color they are. And that's the fairest way to help and assist people in need. Now, so far we've had a cordial conversation with the panel. Now it's time to turn the heat up with Sunny Hostin.
When you say that socioeconomics picks out people in a better way than race, when you do look at the socioeconomics, you see the huge disparity between white households and black households. You see the huge disparity between white households and Hispanic households. So your argument, and I've read your book twice because I wanted to give it a chance, your argument that race has no place in that equation is really fundamentally flawed, in my opinion.
Well, there's two separate questions. One is whether each racial group is socioeconomically the same. That I agree with you. They're not.
They're not. And the stats show that.
But of course, I agree with that fully. The question is, how do you address that in the way that actually targets poverty the best?
Great.
And what Martin Luther King wrote in his book, Why We Can't Wait, is he called it, we need a Bill of Rights for the disadvantaged. And he said, yes, we should address racial inequality. Yes, we should address the legacy of slavery. But the way to do that is on the basis of class. And that will disproportionately target Blacks and Hispanics because they're disproportionately poor. But it will be doing so in a way that also helps the white poor, in a way that addresses poverty as the thing to be addressed.
That part is true.
Now, I actually just finished explaining this in the previous segment, but Sunny just can't seem to calculate. She can't let it sink in. It doesn't seem to be marinating. So you've got a group of impoverished people, and they're made up of various groups. Some of those groups, let's say Blacks and Hispanics, may be the majority within that group of impoverished people. But Sunny, she can't seem to work that out. But don't worry, she's going to double down because she's super clever.
As you are a student of Dr. King, I'm not only a student of Dr. King, I know his daughter, Bernice, right? So I'm going to get to my question.
Go ahead, go right ahead.
I think the premise is fundamentally flawed. You claim that color blindness was the goal of the civil rights movement, based upon Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, content of character versus the color of skin. Bernice, Dr. King's daughter, points out that 4 years after giving that speech, actually, Dr. King also said this. A society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for Negroes. He also said in 1968, it was about less than a week before he was assassinated, this country never stops to realize that they owe a people kept in slavery for 244 years. So rather than class, he did write about that earlier on. Right before his death, he made the argument for racial equality and racial reparations. And so your argument for color blindness, I think, is something that the right has co-opted. And so many in the Black community, if I'm being honest with you, because I want to be, believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a Republican.
So how do you...
He's never voted for a
you,
Republican.
you said that you're a conservative.
No.
No, you did. You actually said that in the podcast that you did 2 weeks ago.
This woman is so disingenuous and so disrespectful. This gentleman is trying to have an honest and open and transparent conversation, and he's brought up issues that are very important. But Sunny always defaults to race baiting or pretending she has more knowledge than the other person. I mean, arguing with the guy whether he's a conservative or he's not a conservative or a Republican or whatever. The fact of the matter is that he's voted both times for Democrats. He claims he's an independent, and this is typical of the mainstream liberal media. They're trying to catch him in a gotcha moment. It's ridiculous, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of this. They only have a small amount of time to speak, and these topics are important, and she wants to catch him out. It's absolutely pathetic. But you betcha she ain't gonna stop like that. She's like a dog with a bone.
I said I was a conservative.
Yes, you did. So, but my question to you is, how do you respond to those critics?
Okay, let's give him. Let him answer.
First thing I think it's very important.
Exactly.
The quote that you just pointed out about doing something special for the Negro. That's from the book Why We Can't Wait that I just mentioned.
Yes.
A couple paragraphs later, he lays out exactly what that something special was, and it was the Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged, a broad class-based policy.
But he also says you must include race.
No, he didn't. He says it's
Yes, he does.
Okay, well, everyone should go read the book Why We Can't Wait. Let's not get sidetracked by that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote for a Republican, probably a non-Trump Republican if they were compelling. I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me with no evidence that I've been co-opted.
I want to give you the opportunity to respond to
I appreciate
the criticism.
I appreciate it. There's no evidence that I've been co-opted by anyone. I have an independent podcast. I work for CNN as an analyst. I write for the Free Press. I'm independent in all of these endeavors, and no one is paying me to say what I'm saying. I'm saying it because I feel it.
Exactly, Sunny. He doesn't need your opportunity that you're giving him to explain himself. He has his own podcast. He's on CNN and he's working for many other outlets. Now, if anyone's been co-opted, it's yourself. You're a race-baiting propagandist. So even her own panel was starting to get a little bit short with Sunny, and even the audience. So I think it's time to move on. So now we're going to move on to The View's favorite topic, race relations.
So in the past decade, it feels like racial tensions have gotten worse. Do you see it that way, and what do you attribute it to?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at all the data, it finds that race relations were getting better until about 2013. That year, you had majority of Black, Hispanic, and white Americans saying race relations were good, and then you just see it nosedive. And 2013, Republicans like to blame Obama. Wasn't his fault. Democrats like to blame Trump. It was actually just technology. We all got social media and smartphones, and we had videos being promoted in the algorithm that were unrepresentative, and it created this impression that racism was on the rise when, in fact, it had been on the decline for decades.
And it allowed everybody. Do you attribute that at all to foreign actors getting involved in technology?
Yes, Russia tries to meddle, absolutely, but I don't think we can blame foreign actors. This is a homegrown problem.
Okay.
Well, I think I disagree with Coleman Hughes for the first time. I do think Obama had something to do with it. Yes, social media has plenty to do with it, but also the mainstream leftist liberal media, the big propagandists pumping out all this BS all the time. And race relations has gotten worse. The other big problem is that because we can't speak the truth and facts, and we can't share this information online, etc., I think that angers people. It's a good example is what Vivek Ramaswamy says. If you tell people they can't speak, they start to yell. If you tell people they can't yell, then they'll act out physically. And I think that's what's happened with race relations. Now, this next segment's quite interesting. Joyless Behart is going to open her trap, and we're going to hear about Ibram Kendi and all those other race baiters.
Because you write that the anti-racism movement, there are a couple of people, I don't even know who they are. Maybe you know
Robin
who they are.
DiAngelo.
Robin DiAngelo,
Yeah.
Ibram Kendi, for instance.
Okay. Well, you say that is just another form of racism, and you even say it has a lot in common with white supremacy. How can you compare those two things?
I compare
about
them because-
anti-racism, you're comparing it to white supremacy.
Because they both view your race as an extremely significant part of who you are. So white supremacists, they obviously say, we all know what they say, okay? Neo-racists like Rob DiAngelo, they say that to be white is to be ignorant, for example. Well, this is a racial stereotype, and I want to call a spade and say this is not the style of anti-racism we have to be teaching our kids. We should be teaching them that your race is not a significant feature of who you are. Who you are is your character, your value, and your skin color doesn't say anything about that.
Even fucking
Actually
Seals did it.
misrepresenting what Robin DiAngelo's position is.
It's in her book.
But a lot
that's
of
just-
And a lot
So
of it's
here
in your
we
book.
go. Here we go.
Misrepresenting.
Thank you, Coleman Hughes, for coming.
There we have it, folks. Sunny Hostin, she just can't help herself, can she? She's always got to be the contrarian. She's got to go against anything that anyone is saying. She loves to be the high and mighty person. She loves that attention, the center of attention in the room. Now, Coleman Hughes was talking common sense. I agree with everything he said except for that part about Obama. He's not at fault, but he definitely has to shoulder some of the blame. He did start some of this victimhood mentality. Now, at the beginning of his campaign, he didn't. He said the opposite. But in his second term, he did the opposite again. He backflipped. Now, I do agree that smartphones, apps like TikTok, where a lot of the younger generation get their news from, has had a huge impact on race relations, but also the mainstream liberal leftist media. They are pushing this propaganda on a daily basis, and they've done it year after year after year. And because they've been getting away with it, they've become more outlandish. Now, I have seen Coleman Hughes a couple of times before. I haven't paid him much attention at all. He seems to be pretty much down the center. He's not controversial at all. His takes aren't controversial at all, I don't think. He seems to be fairly centrist. And I agree with him. If you want to attack poverty, you have to do it broadly and not based on minority groups, because they will naturally get looked after anyway, even if the blacks and Hispanics are disproportionate to whites or Asians living in poverty. So there we have it, folks. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Put I sub in there and I will respond to you immediately. Now, if you want to help a brother out, help me get to that 1,000 sub club. Don't forget to hit the like, smash the subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next video.